Hey guys, I'm Mike Caviani. I'm the Dog Behavior Program Manager here at Austin Pets Alive. Today in this video, we're going to be covering how to teach really rock solid sits. A lot of us, say, yeah, my dog knows sit, but then they kind of don't sit sometimes, or maybe you have to say it 5 times to get them to do it, or they get distracted and then that sit isn't really there anymore, right? So we want to teach these guys that sit really does mean sit. We're not going to say it a whole bunch of times or kind of, beg and plead for them to sit. So we're going to talk about how we do that and then why we utilize this technique. So let's get into that real quick. So you tell your dog to sit, and let's say they don't sit. Or you tell them to sit, they sit, but then 2 seconds later they pop up again. There's a lot of common ways people react in those situations, right? So what's one of them? People will say sit a bunch more times, right? Fluffy, sit. Sit. Fluffy, sit. Sit down, Fluffy, right? You've all probably done it. You've all heard it. And a lot of you are probably like chuckling like, oh yeah, I probably do that. And we all kind of recognize when we talk about it why that's really not that effective, right? If you have to say it 5 times to get your dog to do it, are they really that good at it if they have to hear it that many times? And then you're going to wear the word out, right? They're going to just kind of start tuning you out when you just keep saying it over and over. So we call that recommanding, and we want to really cut down on recommanding. So we're going to say, all right, that's maybe not the best choice if your dog doesn't sit. All right, what else is there? You can pull a treat out, and you can like lure your dog to sit. That's a fantastic way to start teaching your dog to sit from scratch, right? If the dog has no idea what that is and you're truly starting from scratch, absolutely use some food, guide their head up, they look up at it, their butt falls, great, and then you're teaching sit. So that's great for teaching it from scratch. But for the dog that already has an idea of what sit means, should you always have to kind of bribe them to sit, right? So should you always have to have food on you forever to get them to do it? I want to give them food to reward them for doing it, but I don't want to necessarily have to have it on me in order to get them to do it, right? I've met a lot of dogs who you say sit, and they're like, what? I've never heard that word in my life. I'm sorry, what is that? You pull food out, and they're like, oh, sit. Oh, you should have said so, right? We don't want that. We want them to be able to do it without necessarily seeing like, well, what's in it for me first. So that's why we're not going to use food to get them to do the behavior, or if they aren't doing it. So okay, so that one's not a great choice. What else is there? You can ignore your dog, right? You can like take your attention away from your dog if your dog doesn't sit. So an example, you're at home, you want to teach the dog to sit before you leash him up to go outside. All right, great. So you pull the leash out, you tell them to sit, they don't sit. Sit back down, put the leash away. That's pretty solid, right? I actually don't mind that at all. But let's say you're outside on a walk and you want your dog to sit and a bicycle's whizzing by. And you really think your dog is overly excited by bicycles and they want to chase the bike. So you want them to sit and focus on that instead of chasing the bicycle. So you say sit, and they don't sit, and the bicycle's whizzing by, and you turn your back and you ignore them. Is that really that meaningful to your dog in that moment, right? They're probably just like, all right, sweet, you're over there, I'm just going to chase this bicycle, right? So I don't know if in a practical sense, in real life scenarios, if ignoring your dog is going to actually work. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with a concept that we call pressure and release. So we're going to apply a very gentle but steady application of leash pressure when the dog doesn't sit, and as soon as that butt heads back towards the ground, the pressure is gone. So Amy has Hondo here, and Hondo knows what sit means. As you can see, Amy cued it, he responded, which is great. So Amy rewarded him for that. Now we're working on duration like we talked about. So we want to see, is Hondo going to be able to hold this sit for longer and longer periods? So far so good. When we say that a dog knows sit, we want to know that he can sit and hold it for the duration that we've asked for. So if he hasn't heard his release command, which we teach free, then he should be holding that sit. Once he's told free, he can get up. So he's been told sit once, he's responded, now he popped up. Amy added that gentle pressure on the collar, and then the pressure was released immediately once his butt went back down to the ground. So a very good example right there of how we start teaching our dogs this beginning idea that when we say sit, it really isn't optional. We're not going to be punitive about it, but you do have to hold that position until we've said free. So he popped up again. Amy offered this gentle but steady pressure upward, and then the pressure was gone. The second his butt headed towards the ground, the pressure left. Butt popped up, she adds the pressure. Now she's going to add a little butt prompt, pressure off. So she took the pressure in the leash in her opposite hand so she could then comfortably reach down and try to add a little butt prompt. The butt prompt is not shoving or pushing or smacking. You're just kind of putting weight in your left hand and just kind of firmly pressing on the butt just to guide that butt downward. That's the secondary pressure you're going to add if leash pressure doesn't seem to be making sense to the dog. So we talked about in the opening about why we utilize this gentle but steady amount of leash pressure. We know that if we were to pull food out and lure him to sit, he'd never necessarily learn to do it on his own. He'd always want to know kind of what he's got in it for him first. If Amy ignores that sit, he's not necessarily getting timely information because we're just hanging out here outside or on a walk and we want him to be holding a sit. So if we ignore him, again, that might not give him the information, right? He might just kind of go on about his day and keep on not sitting. So right now, notice how she just freed him, right? So she gave him permission to get up. So now they're on a walk. Now they're going to come to a stop again. Sit. She cued it. He sat. Beautiful. She can reward that. So notice it's a free shot, right? When she said SIT, she didn't add pressure when she said it, right? We want to give him a free opportunity to sit without feeling pressure. He just got up. That's when he felt the leash pressure. And Amy did not say sit again when he popped up, right? You guys didn't hear or see her mouth move. She didn't say sit when he got up. We would call that recommanding, which is one of the kind of options we talked about in the intro in terms of commonly done things that we think are not necessarily the most effective. So rather than just saying sit a bunch of times, right, he got up, we don't want him to think, oh, I can get up and like no big deal, they'll just tell me to do it again and then I'll do it again. So he popped up, Amy just nice and calmly added that light but steady leash pressure. As soon as his butt went down on the ground, the pressure left. She's now rewarding him periodically for holding his sit. Important thing to mention, if you've had to use your leash pressure, so he got up, then you added your pressure, and then the butt went down on the ground, you released your pressure. The reward in that moment is the release of that leash pressure. If you reward him with, food or petting or praise right after you've had to use leash pressure, you might by accident teach him a sequence. He might think, oh, okay, stand up, feel leash pressure, sit back down, get food, right? We don't want him to think that feeling the leash pressure was part of what he was supposed to do. So the reward is just the removal of pressure. So Amy added pressure, pressure off, that's the reward. Now if he holds this sit longer and longer, like right now he's looking for crumbs. He held that sit and didn't get up looking for the crumbs. Amy rewarded that with some petting. So Amy is deciding to reward him sometimes with food, sometimes with petting, sometimes with praise, all things that are rewarding to Hondo, specific to Hondo. He thinks all of those are rewarding. Some dogs might not want your food, they might not want your petting, they might not want your praise. He likes all of them, so Amy's just dishing them out fairly and evenly. So now we're gonna move him again. She said free, he's allowed to get up. So now we're gonna go again and we're gonna try for this auto sit. So notice how Amy said sit while she was taking her last step. That's an important little kind of side note here. When you're on a walk and you want your dog to stop and sit next to you, they have no idea that you're gonna stop, right? They can't read your mind. So Amy's gonna show us that again. So Amy knows she's gonna stop, but Hondo has no idea that she's gonna stop, right? He has no way of knowing that. So while Amy takes her last step, or last step or two, she can say sit. That way Hondo hears that before you've actually stopped, and he can stop and sit. So then you guys are stopped right next to each other. Otherwise, if you stopped and then said it, he'd probably be a couple steps ahead of you when he sat. So now they're hanging out nice and relaxed. Also notice, You know, Amy's not convinced that Hondo's gonna hold that sit the whole time, right? He's new, he's only been here a couple of weeks and he's a young dude. So she probably thinks, you know, at any moment he might stand up, but she's not acting like it, right? Her hand isn't adding leash pressure right now because she's worried he might get up any moment. We want that leash pressure to be really meaningful. Right now he's in position, so he gets rewarded and he doesn't feel any leash pressure at all. If he gets up, that's when he feels the pressure. So we don't want to make it almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy by you're worried he's gonna get up, so you start fidgeting with the leash or you start tightening the leash to prevent him from getting up. Now he feels leash pressure, so he thinks something's amiss, he thinks that something's wrong, so then he gets up, right? Then it all kind of just spirals from there. So we don't want to make the choice for him, right? We want him to learn on his own how to make these good choices. So it's all about the information you're giving your dog. Amy's telling him how happy we are with him, that he's holding this sit. She's rewarding him periodically for that. When he breaks the sit, we're just giving him the information that that was actually incorrect because we didn't say free yet. So when he got up, Amy just added that leash pressure. On the leash pressure, probably the last thing we're gonna talk about because Hondo's doing great now. Notice whenever Amy's added it, there is no force behind it, right? There's no forcefulness, there's no really rapid, quick yanking. We don't want it to, again, be punitive. This isn't old school, back in the day, really heavy in the leash corrections. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to get more rewardable behavior. We just want to be able to tell him, that was actually incorrect with this mildly unpleasant leash pressure, so pressure on, pressure off, right? At no point are we wanting to cause pain there. We just want to be persistent and a little, maybe just a little annoying, right? So as soon as Amy released that pressure, that was because his butt was on the ground, and now we're back to holding that sit. So that's teaching sits. We're working on duration right now. You definitely want to watch the videos on teaching sit with distractions and distance. That's kind of the next step once you're at this point. So just working on longer and longer sits. Hondo's doing great. And that's it, guys. So good stuff. Hondo's holding it longer and longer. He's currently up for adoption. So hopefully he gets snatched up soon because that was pretty quick for him to learn that. All right, thanks, guys.